quietly made history in 2026. The state launched the first public domestic violence offender registry in the country, a database that publicly lists people convicted of repeat domestic assault offenses. It's called Savanna's Law. And while the goal is safety, the way this law operates raises serious questions about justice, prevention, and long-term community impact. Let's talk about what this law actually does and what it doesn't. Savanna's Law creates a public registry maintained by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation for people who have been convicted multiple times of domestic assault or related offenses, met specific statutory thresholds set by the legislature. This registry is publicly accessible. It can include the person's name, conviction information, and identifying details. This is not an arrest list. It is not an accusation database. It is a post-conviction registry, meaning people are listed after the criminal process is complete. Now, Savanna's Law was passed in response to real and devastating harm. It was named after a survivor whose story exposed gaps in how repeat domestic violence was tracked and addressed. Savanna's Law is named for Deputy Savanna Puckett, a 22-year-old sheriff's deputy in Robertson County, Tennessee, who was murdered by her ex-boyfriend in January of 2022. According to news reports, Puckett's ex-boyfriend, who had a history of prior domestic violence convictions, shot her multiple times in her home and then set the house on fire. Her death highlighted gaps in how information about repeat domestic violence offenders was tracked and shared, leading her family and advocates to push lawmakers to create a public registry of persistent domestic violence offenders. That effort ultimately resulted in the Tennessee legislature passing and the governor signing Savanna's Law, which took effect January 1st of 2026. The legislature's stated goal was simple: increase transparency and help people identify repeat offenders before harm escalates. On its face, that goal resonates. Domestic violence is often hidden. Patterns are missed, victims are isolated, and too often the system reacts after tragedy. So, the intent behind this law matters. But intent is not the same as impact. Here's where the conversation needs to mature. A public registry does three things at the same time. One, it signals seriousness. It tells survivors, we see you. This harm matters. And that acknowledgement is powerful and overdue. Number two, it changes the consequences of a conviction. This registry extends punishment beyond the sentence. It creates a lasting public label that affects employment, housing, family relationships, community reintegration. And this matters because many domestic violence cases exist in cycles tied to economic stress, untreated trauma, substance abuse, lack of intervention resources. A registry alone does not break those cycles. And number three, it raises due process and equity concerns. Any public registry requires extreme precision because errors are devastating, removal is difficult, and marginalized communities historically experience over-policing and under-support. Without safeguards, registries can become punitive shortcuts instead of prevention tools. Now, let's talk about what Savanna's Law does not do. And this part is critical. Savanna's Law does not fund survivor housing. It does not guarantee access to counseling or legal support. It does not mandate better intervention programs. It does not address why victims stay, return, or are trapped. A registry tells us who has already caused harm. It does not stop harm by itself. And if transparency is not paired with prevention, treatment, accountability pathways, and survivor-centered resources, then the system risks reacting loudly and protecting quietly. So the real question is not, should repeat domestic violence be taken seriously? That answer is yes. The real question is, does this law make communities safer, or does it make punishment more visible without making harm less likely? Safety is not created by a database alone. It is created by early intervention, real accountability, survivor support, and systems that prevent escalation before tragedy occurs. Savanna's Law is a moment. What Tennessee does next will determine whether it becomes a tool for protection or a symbol of missed opportunity. If we're serious about stopping domestic violence, we also have to invest in solutions, not just labels.